Yeah.
Hey everybody, Julie Murphy here, and welcome to another Awaken Your Relationships. After 25 plus years of being a financial planner, the one thing I know for sure is we either work things out and we act it out. We do it through our money, through our health, and our relationships. And this is why Rita's here today to help us get to that relationship piece, whether it's relationships with your employer, your relationships with your money, your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, kids. Guess what? You're the same bird no matter where you're at, so you show up the way you show up. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and notification bell, not only on my channel, but also on Rita's channel, because you want to know when we're talking about stuff, because we're going to get you to a life that you absolutely love. Hey, Rita. Today we're going to be chatting about how to keep calm amongst all the crazy when everything seems to keep going wrong, you know?
Right.
So how do we do this?
I mean, it's a great topic because everybody's noticing that there's meltdowns everywhere. Traffic accidents are up. They just had the studies on that's traffic fatalities and incidents, and people are being more aggressive. They don't know how to handle their feelings. It's everywhere.
They have no bandwidth from like an emotional standpoint. Like their bandwidth, it's as if we talk about this all the time. We have to create space in our nervous system. And, because everything is like we're done with masks. We're done with vaccine. We're done. Pick the done, right? Done commuting to work and not having quality of life, not wanting to go back to, so all these things are pressuring us into choosing to create a life that we really love. But we got to listen to ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing.
Right. Right. I mean, what's been happening lately is people, like you just said, they're getting overstimulated. If we're all connected, we can feel everybody else's vibration. And so if someone on the other part of the planet is stressed out, it does affect us. Even just thinking about how people have been shopping more and how shipping has, it's been hard to get products where they want it to go, and it's caused by COVID and this problem and that problem. And what happens is when we've got a trucker who's sick in California, it impacts, whether you get what you need in order to pay your bills.
So true.
And so we have to start thinking about each other as one global community and how we can support that community.
Well, and so when you're saying this, all I kept thinking of, well, now we're all realizing what oneness really is, that we are all connected, and you're starting to see the chain of all the stuff that we are really connected, even though you think that you're maybe not, but yet you are, because there are people along the supply chain that are doing stuff to create your life that you may not even be aware of.
Right. Whenever people say I'm a self-made person, no one ever helped me. And, that to me it's just not true. It's not real. When I took a trip to Colombia many years ago, and I went to the mountains to study with the Arawaku, a very patriarchal, male sort of dominated thing. But one of the things they taught me was, you want to think back, like they had coffee beans. Okay, so the coffee beans, they came from the plant. Mm-hmm. And before they came from, the plant, somebody had to water and tend to the plant. And then the generations that came, each coffee bean as it got passed down, for hundreds of years, there's a lineage. And when we stop and we think about everybody that touched that coffee bean before it ended up in our cup this morning, if you take a moment and pause and think about what all had to happen for you to be doing that.
Right.
And so we can't ignore that what one person does affects everyone else.
Yep.
And so really paying attention to, everybody else is having meltdowns. What that means is we need to calm ourselves down. If everybody else is having a meltdown, we need to be the balance. We need to be more grounded. We need to be more centered, not join the spectacle of chaos and disruption, but we need to balance out these energies by being the best version of ourselves we can.
That's so true. And I would argue to say that a lot of people don't even know what that best version of themselves are, because we have really chose to not bring our heart along the way for all of our life's decisions. We've left our own heart and our heart's desires on the sidelines because we think that we're supposed to follow what somebody else's thing is, right? Like, because you don't want to make a mistake, or on some level you feel that you're flawed, or somebody knows better than you than your own internal knowing. And that's just not true anymore. Like we believed that for so long. And actually, we should have been, and not should. Our knowing is like our beacon of light to which is the right direction for your life. The problem is we get in our heads and then we get anxiety or we get depressed or whatever, and then we try to disassociate or overcompensate or people please, all the stress coping mechanisms you always talk about. And we're actually just, if we really just went inside, we're all being called, I think, to really build this muscle stronger of our own internal knowing and realizing that, we are all connected.
Well, I was taught not to trust myself, and I think a lot of women were. And, one of the ways we teach kids that you can't trust themselves is when something is wrong, like legitimately wrong, and we tell them that everything's fine. And we don't acknowledge the fact that they feel something, and so kids grow up thinking that they can't trust their own intuition. They can't trust their own knowing, right? Because, it's like telling girls, you need to speak your mind. You need to stand up for yourself. And then they do, and they do it to you and you shut them down. So now kids have mixed messages. They're told you're supposed to express yourself, but not if I don't like it.
Yeah, right? How true is that? I'm finding that that's actually one of the things that I'm actually having a big challenge with my kids' school these days, because it is about just fall in line. And I am really disenchanted, if you will, because it's not about, it's not necessarily about anything except for the fact that I don't want to align with any kind of fear-based system. Anything that's fear-based, because if you're not following your own inner guidance and your reasons why, like some people will tell me that I'm like absolutely crazy when it comes to my kids, and I'm like going, no, because they're smart and they know what's what. And I'll be like, you know what? This is how I feel about it. Where are your thoughts? And they're like, who, me? I'm like, yeah, I want to know. And so that they're part of the process. Now, I'll still hold boundaries, but in the same token, if it's the one thing I want to teach them is how to build them to trust their own gut. And then allow them to have the consequences of that. Because I always say, you can either learn from me or you can learn from life experience. I can help you curve some of that stuff from my own insights, but you have to trust your own gut, whatever that is.
And that's very true once we get the trauma off of somebody's system. Because the biggest problem is not only do we not trust ourselves because people told us, mixed messages, but we don't trust ourselves because our body is telling us to run as fast as we can. And it's telling us to rescue ourselves. And it's telling us that we're helpless. And it's telling us that we need to protect ourselves at all costs. And so when your body's telling you that you're in danger, but your mind is rigidly trying to keep your body in place, right? And not do anything. I mean, what's your intuition? Is it your mind or is it the fear to run? And actually, it's neither. It's only when you get rid of the fear and you calm your mind down, can you hear your intuition. But because it's so strong, the addiction to run, the addiction to the cortisol and the adrenaline is so strong, so overwhelming that we just keep acting out, trying to survive instead of learning, oh, this isn't a dangerous situation. Now's the time for me to walk away and take a walk.
Right. Yeah. And there's this part of the bridge, right? There's a bridge in between those two worlds. So I know that I am in a place where I'm on the other side of the bridge from where I started. Like I'm, and there's still meltdowns. But they're not meltdowns like they were. They're just, I'll call them pauses even, like kind of going, like now I know to recognize it and feel it, and then what, right? And it's interesting to me to be able to observe that, because I've created so much space in my nervous system to now be able to observe it. But then it's about, there is a mental confusion, if you will, when you're in the place of, once you're past the trauma, to then following your knowing, because it's like you can see how you would naturally have gone this way with this decision, but yet you're holding true for what's in your heart's desire for the new, but yet the fear in there is still trying to almost get you to, on a physiological level, to respond like you used to, but you're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. But yet it's still like lingering, even though you're not energizing it, right? It's fascinating to be in that place, to be able to be like, okay, I'm still on the bridge because I'm not fully in the new place yet, but I'm past so much of the trauma. And so now what? And that's the interesting part. That's the interesting part, because you want to trust the new, but yet you're building the muscle of the new, because you really haven't built the muscle yet. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to find mentors. Am I a small picture on your screen, or am I half the screen? I think I'm mini.
You're 2/3.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
You're not half. You're 2/3.
I feel very special for them. Why? Thank you very much. It's important to find mentors and people who've gone before us, because this isn't the first time, a woman, any man has gone through this process of self-development and personal growth. So true. The problem is we hide, and we're too frightened to tell people that we have problems because we think we'll be judged.
Right.
And the repercussions, because maybe we've been judged in the past, or maybe we've been harmed, or in the past we were helpless. I remember when I walked away from my abuser, I really didn't have many options. I mean, and the only option that I could come up with was to lie, to get myself out of there so that I could be safe.
Right.
And then you hold on to those coping mechanisms instead of growing up. Then anytime somebody raises an eyebrow or looks mean, then you just sort of, do a little white lie. You just, don't
That's true.
tell
because you're trying to create a protective. I've noticed this with people that I've actually worked with, where they will almost say anything to just get out of the trigger, or to get out of the situation, even if it's a lie. And it's just like, you're just making shit up as you go. But when you can recognize it as their body is in abort, they'll do anything to escape it so that they feel safe. It's all about safety. It's all about emotional safety.
Yes. And so we have to find people who, are centered, can be good role models, who aren't going to judge, who understand what's happening. I remember when I was in school, and ADD kids and ADHD kids would always get sent off to another room and get, special teaching and everything. It was sad. It was horribly, horribly sad. And it's because people didn't understand how ADD and ADHD worked. And a lot of times they still don't. I mean, they understand, but the general public doesn't understand. And so the kids keep getting, traumatized by it. But we now know how to help with different brain disorders. We know how to reverse trauma. And we have to stop living in that place thinking we're helpless, because we're not. And then you find somebody who can help you through, who's been through it before. We exist.
Right. Do you do you know, with the traumas that people experience, is that the catalyst for ADD, ADHD?
No.
Or is that
ADD,
just the way you're wired no matter what happens?
You're ADD, ADHD, no matter what happens, but you tend to create trauma because of it and because of misunderstanding. So as an adolescent and a kid, you don't know how to manage all that stuff. And
Right.
So they go deeply into fight or flight. And then their behaviors are way over dramatic, to what's going on, which then people who don't understand will treat it in a dramatic way. I had a friend of mine who told me, he was in a riot and he was throwing bottles. And so a cop came up to him and hit him in the head with, a club and knocked him out. He ended up in jail. It happened because his brain needed that stimulation and was drawn like a moth to a flame to the chaos.
Right.
And then, but if you're going to be there, then bad things are going to happen. It takes a force of will to stay in a good place. It takes really good parenting if someone's got ADD and ADHD. And if they don't get good parenting, as soon as they become an adult, they need to, or to the point where they need to parent themselves, because there's help. But layered onto it is trauma. And so when now you have ADHD and you layer on trauma, now you have borderline personality.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we can recognize that borderline personality is just a kid with ADD and we help them reverse their trauma, then they can get into a better space.
Yeah, that's true. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So that's interesting to understand about the brain and trauma. So the anyone who's in those scenarios would have to even create more space then to avoid the meltdowns.
Right. So they need even more space. They need even stronger boundaries. They need to nourish themselves even more, spend more time outside, centering, grounding, getting the community that they need. They need more stability. But here's the genius part. An ADHD brain is a genius brain.
Right.
And
I always say that I feel like you're killing all the future entrepreneurs by putting all ADD people on medication.
Right.
Because you have to be able to do 10 million different things at once being an entrepreneur.
Yep. And you have to be able to think ahead and future plan and stay grounded. And, and so an ADHD brain is really, really smart. They have a hard time focusing. But if they get what they need, and they get rid of the trauma that's on their system, then they can take that superpower they have and direct it towards anything that they want that would make the world a better place, and they'll be amazing at it.
Right. So true.
So true. Meltdowns are people who are overstimulated, and if we add to the stimulation by not taking care of our own aggravations and our own stress and our own stuff, we're just going to make everything worse.
Well, and
but if we can bring ourselves level, we make things better.
Well, and that's where I see with people on the money front, we do that with debt and spending more than what we actually make. Like that's where you're layering on more in a financial front. When you talk about your relationship with money, like it's unbelievable the corners that we put ourselves in. And, there's all kinds of choices that can be made in life to where you can live still a high quality life and not necessarily nail your butt to the wall with all your expenses going out of your pocket. Like it's really fascinating to me to watch this quotient of what I call real wealth. And it's about the quality, this profound sense of happiness that you can come to, and it's on some level a part of being content in your reality while you're striving for where it is that you want to go. But it's also this profound sense of joy and freedom. The freedom one feels when they're embodying real wealth you can build up all this money and you still, 9 out of 10 times, you're still not going to be satisfied. You're still going to have the meltdowns. You're still going to have not enough space. And why? Because you didn't love your life every step of the way. And in doing the healthy things for yourself before, doing everything for everybody else.
I like to give people paradigm shifts. Like they'll tell me, well, I want to get these things done because when they're done, I'll feel good. I'll feel good that I got up and I got them done and I ticked them off my list. Right. And I said, well, that's fine. But what you really want to do is make doing those jobs one of the most fun parts of your day. And how can you set it up that doing the dishes or vacuuming or trimming the bushes or picking up sticks or driving your kid to soccer is the best part of your day?
Right.
Because if you do that, that's how you're supposed to live life, enjoy. And so instead of rewarding ourselves for working really hard or putting our nose to the grindstone, how about we make our work fun? Even if it's not a job that seems fun, how can we add joy and life and nourishment, everything that we choose to do?
Right. And I have found that when I'm coaching people in terms of, well, do you love your job? And they're like, it brings the money in. I'm like going, okay, that's not love. Like, that's not love at all. And you may have loved it at one time, but maybe you're bored. Maybe you're not challenged. Maybe, life's just shifted. And I don't know where it is that we thought that we didn't have permission to switch gears. But it's hardwired into the majority of us that it's not okay. That you're supposed to be on this linear line. I had somebody challenge me the other day, a good friend of mine that I went to Notre Dame with. He challenged me in terms of, well, Jewel, think about your kids' education. Have you read about what Elon Musk is doing? He said, I think our education system is set up a little backwards. And he goes, what if you just took what you really excel at and keep excelling at that, and then as you keep excelling at the thing that you're really great at, then start to fill in the holes of but keep excelling. So the kid is learning to just love learning because they're really excelling, and you'll get to the other parts and it'll come, as opposed to let me keep beating you up until you get the part that you suck at. And I remember reading in there is a book, Deepak Chopra wrote a book, and he said in there, Freedom, Power, and Grace, I think is the name of the book. And he talks about, could you imagine what the world would be like as if we just really let kids' education be based on where they just thrive? And that, one day if you're not good at balancing checkbook, you hire somebody to balance your checkbook. Like, think of the world that we would be in if we just focused on everybody's strengths. We wouldn't have the meltdowns. We wouldn't have... I even think of from the perspective of, my kids and being in a divorced family, and it's like, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. I remember at the beginning of my divorce process, I said to my ex, I said, well, I tend to be uber responsible and you tend to be the fun guy and like the kids' sports and their activities. And I'm not so much on, I'm more like, get your education. I go, why don't we just focus on each other's strengths? And we tag team and we, parlay this. And when you're in your trauma, you're offended by that. And when you're not in your trauma going, oh yeah, those are my strengths. Yeah, he's really great at that aspect and I'm really great at this aspect. So let's just take what we're both great at and let's just try to create really amazing kids, even though we're a divorced family. And I don't see why we all can't do that. Right.
Well, the reason we can't do that is because people haven't learned yet the importance of regulating their nervous system. That's the drum I'm always beating down the road, which is if you keep being hijacked by how you feel, if you keep getting angry and frustrated and overwhelmed and checking out, you're not in your right self. You're not in the right part of your mind. And you have to know that you need to calm down, and you have to decide to calm down. And you have to actively do the thing to calm down. But when you're in the middle of it, I know healers who don't use any of their own tools. They'll be on a call with me and I'll have to be a little heavy-handed. They'll be starting to have anxiety and stressing out. And I'll go, wait, do you have any of your oils around? I need you to go and get some oils. I need you to get like 3 and start smelling them, because we get caught in this trap in our amygdala and we can't get out. It's like you don't see any answers anywhere. And so at first you have to have somebody guide you. This is how you do it. But then you just realize, I just need to calm myself down, which is where you and I are at.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. Like, the other day I was realizing, so, the universe always gives you tests, right? So I'm holding space, and I'm observing clients moving through this stuff, my kids moving through this stuff, and whoever else I encountered that day. And by the end of the day, I'd held space all day long for everybody. And there were pretty intense things that came through that day. At the end of the day, it was like there was one more that just put me over the edge. And I was like, and then my stuff was triggered. I was like,
What a gift. What a gift. I hate to tell you that, but when you're in the middle of it, it feels like I got triggered again. I'm a failure. But in reality, what it is the iceberg is surfacing. It's coming to the surface so that you can clean it off of your system permanently. What a wonderful thing to get overwhelmed.
It took a lot for anything to come up. Like, it was all day long. Like, I was moving stuff, showing people their patterns, holding the space, and then people wrote, because when you hold the safe space for people, they can then see it and they can rise. And even though they try to come at you, it's really fascinating to me, because this happens with clients, this happens with my kids, this happens with, family members. But if you can hold that safe space and not be in any of your trigger, all of a sudden they then can see their stuff. And this is another great way how you really can avoid meltdowns. Like, just continue to see it as, okay, they're the ones triggered, not you. Just keep holding the space, holding the space. And even if space means you have to physically move, like, go somewhere else. Like, but then they can be in their own, and you're not having to have the attempts of being negotiated away, because the attempts come there. It's the practice. I feel like it's the practice field, right?
Well, imagine what it was like when you were at Notre Dame. When you were going to school at Notre Dame, I'm sure you didn't wait all day, hold sacred space for everybody wonderfully, and you know what I mean? To let them work their stuff out. You probably bulldozed them like I did. I mean, I totally bulldozed them.
I was a bulldozer for sure.
And
so, I was super clear recently, like, I'm not pushing anything. Like, even, looking to buy a new house. And I'm like, the real estate agent was like, well, Jewel, I don't know. I go after everything that I want and I just go get it. And I go, yeah, I've done that my entire life. And I'm really clear. This one's not supposed to go this way. That if it's really meant to be where I'm supposed to be, I don't have to push at all.
You'll be shown. Yep, you'll be shown.
That's the other way to avoid a meltdown. Don't push. Don't push. Allow it to rise to the surface, because it should be easy and graceful if it's meant for you. And if it's not, you don't have to push. And I'm not saying don't take practical action, because we do have to take practical action steps, but we don't have to push. And most of us have been trained to push. That's how we got
this movie. Yeah, there's this movie I watched probably a couple months ago, and it was a bartender in Boston, and his nephew lived with him, and it was a great touching family story. And so he's helping raise this boy, and one of the lessons was never hit a woman, even if she stabs you with scissors. So what I got from that was, no matter how dramatic you feel, no matter how much you feel you need to go in there swinging or send that text or send that email, no matter how compulsive it is to eat, that 10th cookie or donut or whatever it is, stop, breathe, and come up with a better solution.
Right. So true. And even if you don't come up with a solution, just breathe and walk away. Like, because maybe you're not meant to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
That's what I'm learning. Like, it'll all work its way out without, it's like it'll work its own way out without you doing a darn thing. And that'll absolutely happen.
Exactly. And the hardest part is trusting. Yep. The hardest part is trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting your friends. You know,
that's a big theme these days that I'm learning, is that you can really avoid some meltdowns if you just trust. This has been the whole part, like with my kids' school. They go to a private school that's faith-based, and I'm like, what happened to faith and trust that all's gonna be okay instead of all this fear? I'm like, I'm just asking. I'm like, I'm kind of getting to a place where this is ridiculous, you know? And so it's interesting to continue to be able to observe that it's really about this surrender process of trust, and choose to set the intention that I'm going to find a different way than approaching this from a fear perspective. Because when I realize that if you're pushing, there's probably some fear behind it.
Know your tells. You got to know your own tells. If you know you do this certain thing every time you start to get stressed, you reach for something, or you snap at somebody, or drive a little faster.
Yep.
If you learn your tells,
yep.
then you can say, "Oh, we don't do that anymore."
Exactly.
And then you can course correct fast. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can course correct really fast once you start to see the tell signs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for no more meltdowns.
Yep. And I love it. My life is at that place, which is really wonderful. I don't have meltdowns. Nobody in my sphere of influence has meltdowns, partially because when someone comes to me in a meltdown place, I naturally, just by being present, it calms them down. And they become more centered. And I believe that when people are calm and centered, they will always make good decisions. And when they are dysregulated, they will probably make bad decisions.
So true.
So the whole thing is just let everybody take a breath and center, and then see where we're at.
Exactly. So Rita, if people need to get centered with you, how do they find you?
They can find me at ritahickmancoaching.com, and or just do a search for me on YouTube or Facebook. And I'm doing one workshop a month, a 2-hour healing workshop a month on different topics. So we just did how to raise a heart-centered child, and then people can get the recording if they want that. Actually, heart-centered child or grandchild. So it's for moms and grandmothers. Next month, it's going to be around letting go of your money fears, your money anxiety. So a 2-hour workshop to let those things go. And then April will be something about Easter or renewal, and then Mother's Day and Father's Day. And I'm going to do a whole year of it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And I'm going to start here in March. Go to juliemurphy.com, because March I'm going to do weekly live coaching, group coaching. So, and it's a 3-month minimum, because I want you to actually affect change in your world. So go to juliemurphy.com, just sign up for our email list, and you'll, when the signups go out there, come on out. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, and notification bell for not only myself, but Rita as well, so you can get to a life that you absolutely love. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.